session 53. And what is this Torah that we are studying all about? This living Torah, the written word of God that first proceeded from his mouth, was written on stone and eventually became alive and put on a body of flesh. What is this Torah all about? What is our journey through this Torah, this living word? What is it all about? Because we are in 2020, September. The whole system has become a slave system. We are in Egypt, just like Israel was. We are under a slave master. He cracks the whip, and we all have to stay home and can't go to work. Slowly but surely, we are now at level 2, but the second wave, we believe, is coming, and then we're all back under the whip, and Pharaoh cracks his whip, and the servants and the slaves must just obey. And the economy is our slave master. You have to get up every morning and go to work and pay your bills. We are in a slave system. And the Torah talks about slaves. The Torah teaches God's people the principle of his kingdom, the principle of why he came to set the captives free. Because even in God's Torah, he teaches his people that we need to set slaves free. But listen, there's a certain kind of servant. And I've already put my makeup on this morning. I don't want to cry now. There's a certain kind of servant that does not want to be set free. There's a certain slave that loves his master so very much that when his master tells him, listen, you've worked for 6 years. This is the 7th year. It's the year of your freedom. Here's your freedom. Go away. Go back wherever you want. And this servant falls down in front of the master. And do you remember what Peter, said to Yeshua? When Yeshua said, if you don't eat my body and drink my blood, you have no part of me. And we know he's the Torah. If we don't eat the bread of the Torah and drink the blood of the Torah, the Torah that bled for us, so we can repent and get forgiveness, and we can be taken out from the kingdom of darkness, out from under the Pharaoh slave system, the Antichrist beast, new world order that is run by Illuminati and run by the serpent in the tree of knowledge. This blood that we have to drink, not like cannibalism. Don't find something to point a finger to. We drink and we eat from this living word. And all Yeshua had like 70 or 120 disciples, and they all left him. They all went away and they said, this word is too hard for us. We cannot take it anymore. Just like the people around the mountain. We can't take this anymore. So you know what, then go away. Here's your certificate of freedom. If you don't want to be my servant, here's your freedom. Go away. Stand back far away from the mountain. Go away from me. And he said to his 12 disciples, are you also going to leave me now? And what did Peter say? Because today we are going to discuss the bond servant, laws about slaves. And all the laws about slaves falls under property, under the head category. I've given you the distinguished 10 head categories for all the laws. So specifically under the property category, slaves fall under that category. And today we are going to discuss the bond servant, a special type of servant, a servant that is a slave. But then according to the law of God, his people, not the rest of the world treat their slaves like, I don't want to say the word, over the last how many thousands of years, right? But this Torah master and the people that listens and obeys the Torah, they treat their slaves in a different way. And and this slave has to be set free. But this specific slave don't want to go anywhere else. So what does Peter say when Yeshua said, are you also going to leave me? Because all those disciples left him. You remember at one stage there was 120 disciples. And Yeshua sent them out all over Galilee and Nazareth and Judea and to go heal the sick and spread the gospel. And they came back and said, oh, Master, it was amazing. Even the devils listened to us. And then he also said, it doesn't matter that the devils listen to you. You must obey me and you must have your word in me. Nevertheless, he had so many disciples. And when he said, eat my flesh and drink my blood, they all left him. And he said to his disciples, so you're going to leave me as well now. And Peter said the following words. And listen to these words now, because this takes us back all the way back to the Torah, all the way back to property, because we are the property of our master. And we're going to discuss the bond servant. And the bond servant Peter himself, who even called himself a bond servant in 1 Peter 1 somewhere, I can't remember. Let me find it. 2 Peter 1 verse 1. I am Shimon Kefa. I'm a bond servant and an apostle of Yeshua. Yes, I know your translation only says servant, but I'll get to that later on. This bond servant, everybody else has left him. He also now, him and all the other disciples, the 12 disciples, they have the opportunity to leave Yeshua. Because if you only listen to Yeshua on physical level, you'll think that he told them to cannibalize, to eat his body and drink his blood, to kill him and then take his blood and goop, 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 drink the blood. So obviously that's not what he meant. You have to understand what eat the flesh and drink the blood means from the Old Testament, from the definition, from the dictionary of the New Testament. But it's only stupid people that only looks on physical level and they want to point a finger and say, oh, you're a cannibal. Look at, I don't want to talk about that. So Peter had the opportunity here to leave Yeshua. He had more than enough reason and excuse to leave. Right? Just like the bond servant that we're going to discuss of Exodus 21 had more than enough reason to leave. He's got his freedom. You now have the opportunity. Leave if you want to leave. And Peter says, Master, listen to this now. He says, Master, where will we go? Because you have the words of life. There's a certain kind of servant that does not want to be set free from his master. And that is the kind of servant that becomes a son and a daughter. All right. And the only way to understand this is to study the Torah. Let me show you. Exodus 21 verse 2 to 6. And now remember, we discussed the 10 main commandments, which is the summary of the rest. Alright? Just after the 10 was given, when God starts speaking the rest of his Torah, what is the beginning of the next chapter, the very next chapter? It doesn't talk about marriage. It doesn't talk about children. It doesn't talk about the bride. It doesn't talk about, it talks about a servant, but not any servant. This specific kind of servant. This servant that has another kind of spirit inside of him. This servant that has another kind of heart inside of him. Because the law says, Exodus 21 verse 2 to 6, the law says, if you buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve you, and in the 7th year you shall let him go for free for nothing. So you bought him, the slave cost you money, right? But he only works for 6 years. And remember, the principle of a day is like a year, and 1 year is like 1,000 years, that all beautiful prophetic symbolism. We are only slaves to this prince of darkness for 6 years or 6,000 years. In the 7th year, in the 7th day, which is Shabbat, in the 7th year, you set the slave free. In the 7,000 or the 7th millennium is when Yeshua will reign, and he is the one that redeemed all his servants from the curse of the law, which is the death penalty that hangs over them. And because the death penalty hangs over them, they belong to the kingdom of death. But Yeshua, the Master, redeemed us with his blood. He was sold for silver, and silver in the Torah is explained as when you redeem an animal or you redeem a slave, you use silver. They didn't pay with gold. That's another long story. Let's not go into that too deep. But in the 7th millennium, we will also go free. That's why we keep Shabbat on the 7th day. We need to practice this. Hebrew servants, come on. But some of you, some of the Hebrew servants, some of God's servants has another kind of attitude. Listen to this now. So, in the 7th year, you shall let him go for free. Right. But if that servant came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married before you bought him, then his wife shall go with him after the 6 years. All right. If his master have given him a wife, all right, if he wasn't married when he came into his master's kingdom, and this wife that his master gave him bore to him sons and daughters, listen to this now, the wife and the children belongs to the master, not to the servant. And then in the 7th year, the servant shall go out alone, not with his wife and children. But now, look at the specific kind of servants, because most servants will be, yay, I got my freedom. I'm not going to work as a slave anymore to this horrible master. Just give me my money and let me get out of here. That's most servants' attitude. But there's a specific kind of servant. And in verse 5, just like Peter, Peter says, where shall I go, my master? You've got the words of life. I don't think there's any other place I rather want to be than with you. And Peter confirms he's a bondservant. And we are only taught the New Testament, and we are taught to throw away the Torah because it's freaking Jewish. So we have no idea what it means to be a bondservant. Because we don't even read Exodus 21 because it's got apparently nothing to do with us. The slave master that has his roots in the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I'm sick of him. And I want to get out of his slavery. And that's why I have taken the redemption blood. I'm eating the body of Messiah, and I'm drinking his blood, and I'm coming under the Yom Kippur sacrificial system. Please just redeem me from the slave master, from Pharaoh. I will put the blood on the doorpost. Please let the angel of death pass me. And Yahuwah, please bring me out of Egypt. Take me through the wilderness, take me to the mountain, teach me your ways, and take me with you into the promised land. I'm that kind of servant, are you? Verse 5, and if the servant shall plainly say, Master, I love you. I don't want to go free. Exodus 21 verse 5. But if the servant shall plainly say, I love you, my master, I will not go out free. Master, I love the wife you gave me. I don't want to go free. Master, I love the children you gave me, and I don't want to go free. Don't send me away from you. Like Peter said, Master, where shall we go? Don't send us away. We are not like the rest of your disciples who are running away. We want to stay with you. And the servant says, I love you, my master. I don't want to go free. I'm like Joshua and Caleb when everybody turned around and wanted to go back to Egypt. Joshua and Caleb said, Don't sin against God. Trust Him. He promised us He will take us into the promised land. We have to obey His command. And the Bible says, but Caleb and Joshua had another spirit inside of them. And this spirit inside makes the servant say, Master, I love you. Don't give me my freedom. Yes, I'm taking my freedom. And as a free slave, I'm telling you, I want to remain your servant. I don't want to go out. I don't want to go free. The wife and the children that I got while I was in your service, while I'm in your kingdom, I love them. I love all the people that's inside your kingdom. I don't want to go out. I want to stay here. Exodus 21 verse 6. Then his master shall bring him unto the judges, and he shall also bring him to the door, and he shall bring him to the doorpost. Are you following? You must listen carefully. You must make your connections now on your own. The master brings the servant to the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. He shall basically take an awl, which is a sharp tool, and he shall stick the sharp tool through the servant's ear unto the doorpost. Imagine this now. Try and see it. I'm your servant, master. I don't want to go free. I want to stay with you. I don't want to go anywhere else. So you mark me now, because the Torah gives us the sign of the bond servant. And like I told you before, the sign of the bond servant is a circumcised ear, because you will bear the mark of the sharp tool that was stuck through your ear unto the doorpost. You will wear that mark forever. Okay. And if you step away from the doorpost, look back. What is on the doorpost? Blood. Because the servant has been redeemed with the blood of his master. And now the servant, giving his own blood also, says, you are my master. I don't want to go nowhere. I want to stay with you. You redeemed me. And your redemption brings me freedom. But I love you more than my freedom. And I love your people more than my freedom. Please take that sharp tool and push it through my ear. Cut my ear. Let there be blood on the doorpost. I want to serve you forever. This is the most beautiful Torah commandment. It explains to the master what to do with a servant that loves him. And can I tell you, in the Israel community over all these thousands of years. Now slavery is abolished. We don't see this anymore. But this is the way they treated their servants. And the servant that progresses from being a slave to having the sharp tool through his ear onto the doorpost, and he progresses to become a bond servant, a servant that has a bond with his master. Do you know what the Hebrew families did with that servant for the rest of his life? He became part of the family. He became part of the family. He was no longer a slave. Yeshua says in the New Testament, I don't call you servants anymore. I call you brothers. You are no longer my servants. You are my brothers. 1 Corinthians 7 verse 21 to 23. And I'm reading to you the English Standard Version because they translated correctly. Were you a bond servant when you were called? Do not be concerned about it. But if you can gain your freedom, avail yourself of the opportunity. For he who was called in Yeshua as a bondservant is now a free man of Yeshua. Likewise, he who was free when he was called is now a bondservant of Yeshua. You were bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. I apologize. Do not become bondservants of men. If you were free before you came into the kingdom, you are now a bondservant. If you were a bondservant before you came into the kingdom, you are now free. Whatever you were before, you come under this master. You come into his kingdom and you have your freedom. But because you have that freedom, I apologize. You now love the one who gave you that freedom so much that you give up your freedom and you become a bondservant. A servant that has a bond with his master. Most slaves just serve because they have no choice, or they serve because they are afraid of their master. And like I said before, if you're going to serve God because you are afraid of hell, you know what, you can just as well leave it. You're not going to make it anyway. Because fear or trying to avoid hell is not a motivating factor. You're going to just be a slave and you're going to serve your master just because you have to. And that is just a normal slave. There are more than enough of those. And at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to endure. Why will they endure difficult times when their heart and their ears are not circumcised? And what will motivate them to endure if they only serve out of fear or because they have to? The bondservant is different. The bondservant serves because he loves. He loves his master just so much. So we can serve God because we have to, or because we fear, or we are scared of what other people will say. We can serve him that way if we want. But God's instruction includes how to deal with a servant that does not want to serve God out of fear or out of necessity, but he wants to serve God out of love. And on physical level, his master, whether he works on a farm or wherever. The servant that knows that there's no better place for him than right by his master. The servant that loves his kind and his good master so very much. The servant that loves the environment of his master, the family of his master, the community of his master, and the rules and the authority of his master. That is the kind of servant that Yahuwah wants. That is a bond servant. A servant that develops a bond with God, that progresses from being just a slave on the farm to sitting with the master at the dinner table. and eating with the master like his own son. I no longer call you servants, I call you brothers. With that attitude, we can continue to study our master's instructions. Because why? We want to serve this great and wonderful master with our whole heart. We don't want our freedom. The grass is not greener any other place than right here under the wings of our master. Our master will fight for us. Our master has redeemed us. He has paid a price for us. Just a stupid poor slave who was in bondage in Egypt. Just a stupid, poor, pathetic slave that is standing on the marketplace with chains on his ankles and chains on his hands, and he's standing there on the marketplace. He has been kidnapped from, let's say, Northern Africa or somewhere, and he's standing on the marketplace, and there's an auction for slaves, and everybody is screaming and shouting, and this poor slave knows that whoever buys him today is going to treat him badly. He's going to work so hard, and he's not going to be treated well, and he's going to be whipped with a shambok on his backside. So whoever bids in the auction, he just glares at them and he hates them because he knows they're going to just treat him so poorly, and they're buying him just so that he can go and work for them for the rest of his poor life. Oh, and he misses his family, and he's hungry, and he's tired, and he stands, most of them were standing naked on the market, and this poor slaves can hear this one man bidding, and then there's another man bidding, 20 shekels of silver, 21, 22, who gives me 25, 25, 25, 25, 26, 26, 26, and there's this one old man, and he says, 30 shekels of silver, and the slave look at this old man, oh, and he hates him. And there's another guy that screams, 35, 35. And this old man says, 40. And the slave looks at this old man, and he knows this old man is going to grind him into the dust. He's going to work his backside off. This old man looks so angry and difficult. And the slave stares at this old man. He doesn't want him to win the auction. He doesn't want to go with this, and he hates him. He starts hating this old man in his heart. And eventually the auctioneer says, last bid, who will give me 55 or whatever? And the old man says 55, and the auctioneer says, sold. Oh, and this slave, tears are running down, tears of anger and frustration and sadness streams down his face. He doesn't want to go with this freaking old man to his farm. He doesn't want to go work for this stupid old man. How dare he buy him as if he's just a piece of meat? And the old man takes the slave, and just as they went around the corner, he takes the key and he loosens the chains around the slave's ankles and the slave's arms, and he's won the auction bid, but it cost him a lot, because there was a lot of other people that wanted the slave, but he continued to auction higher and higher and higher because he really wanted the slave. And the moment he got the slave, he loosened the bonds and the chains around his ankles and around his hands, and he told the slave, you are free. And the slave, he doesn't understand. This bastard just bought him to go and work on a farm somewhere. What do you mean I'm free? And the man walks away, the old man, and the slave stands there, and he just received his freedom. And he looks around and he sees all the other people that has bought slaves, and they are pulling them and pushing them and swearing at them, and he's standing there, a free man. And he runs after the old man, and he and he grabs him by his ankles, and he says, I don't want to go free. You are such a nice man. Please forgive me that I've hated you while you were auctioning for me. Please take me home with you. I want to serve you forever. That slave chose to go home with that old man, when originally he thought he was going to be bonded under a burden. He now realizes the old man spent all that money to redeem the slave and give him his freedom. Nobody has ever treated him like this. And the slave became a bondservant, and the bondservant became like a son to the old man, and they went home together. A bondservant in the New Testament is G1401, and the Greek word is doulos, and it's from the original G1210, dio, that means to bind. You are binded to your master as you are a bondservant. 2 Peter 1 verse 1, Shimon Kefa, I'm a bondservant and an apostle of Yeshua. Matthew 25 Yeshua tells the parable of the king that leaves his kingdom in the hands of his servants, and to some of them he gave 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. And after a long time he came back and he reckoned with his servants. And the one that had 5 talents came to him and said to him, Master, you delivered unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained 5 more besides the ones you gave me. And his master said to him, Well done, my good and faithful bondservant. You have been faithful while I was away. You were faithful over a few things, but come now, I will make you ruler over many things. I will make you like a son to rule with me. Enter into the joy of your master. That was Matthew 25 verse 21. And you know that the servant, the slave that only got 1 talent, was afraid. He only served his master because of fear, and he ended up being thrown into the pit of fire. Luke 12, Yeshua tells the parable of the faithful and wise steward. The master made him rule over his household while the master was away. Our master currently is away, and we are his servants, and he gives us work to do. Blessed is the servant, Luke 12 verse 43. When the master returns, he finds his servant doing the work that he gave him. Of a truth I tell you that I will make him a ruler over all that he has. But if the servant says in his heart, my lord, my master is staying away such a long time, and he starts doing other things than the work that he was given, and he starts being drunken by the doctrines of this world, that master of that servant will come in a day when he doesn't expect, and he will cut him asunder. He will cut him with that 2-edged sword that we have discussed now more than enough, and you know what it means. That sword either cuts your ear and circumcises you, or it's going to cut you in pieces and throw you out of the kingdom. Revelation 1 verse 1 and 2. The revelation of Yeshua HaMashiach, which Yahuwah gave him, to show unto his bondservants, his doulos, all the things that must come to pass shortly. Shortly, the things are going to come to pass. And these are the bondservants that will be blessed, verse 3 of Revelation 1. These bondservants, blessed are they that reads, and they that hear, Shema, O Israel, they that hear the words of this prophecy, and they that keep, not only read and hear, but read, hear, and keep all the things that is written, for the time is at hand. The time is close for us as the bondservants of our Master, that we start serving Him with our whole heart. This is how we must serve our Master. While He is away, we have to learn the law and the testimony and the revelation of Yeshua on every page of His Father's instructions. We have to learn how to please the Father. We have to learn and do everything our Master instructed us to do while He is away, so that when He returns to a servant that is not just sitting and waiting to be paid and then be set free, but a servant that cannot wait to see his Master again. A servant that longs and desires his Master to come home, not because there's a reward for me, but because I love and respect you, and I miss you, and I adore you, my wonderful Master. That is the law of the bondservant, because ultimate freedom is in serving the one who paid for your freedom. And ultimate freedom is only found in this Master, because in Him alone can you be free.